not recognize the room that was full with the Orcaton preschool kid. I think there was like 5 or 6 preschool children here. We have new members for the religious school. We actually had to make our circle bigger for the first time because there were so many kids here. It's fabulous. So Renee's done a great job with Orcaton, and Leah and Renee with the religious school, so you'd be really impressed. So a couple quick things. Marty has the King Supers cards. So for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it is a card that you use to buy just regular groceries when you're at King Supers, and they give us 3%? 5% of that cash comes back to us. It is a huge fundraiser. It doesn't take any time. It's just when you check out, you load your card and you pay with that card. So you can do it however you want to do it.
But if you put $100 on your card, Tempur has got this card.
So,
Tempur has actually pays 95 cents.
So, you already have them if you're interested in them.
That's me.
If you have an old one that's gone dead, because if you have a zero balance for 3 months, they did deactivate it, you got to get a new one, but Marty can get that for you.
I think we also have an arrangement with Albertsons. If you have, it's a little key chain thingy, they give us a percentage.
Are we still doing the Albertsons ones?
We still have Albertsons. I did not bring those with me.
Okay.
But they give us 1 or 2%.
And it also covers beer.
And at times, that has accounted for a couple $100 coming into Orthodox. Just from that, just from groceries you were going to buy anyway. So it really is helpful.
A jazz.
You can, but convenient here.
But when you need to refill it, if you go in the store, you
Yeah, you just refill at the store.
and then shop for 15 minutes and then it's ready.
Yep.
But they can refill it at the checkout counter. Just give it to them at checkout before they start bringing your groceries.
So
So
that's
what I do is I go through the line, I say, here's my card, I'm going to put $50 on it, they do that, and then I start checking out. And then
Just one? Or do
I
you
just pay with the card and my card. It's super easy. Many of you know Rabbi Katzir is an author and he wrote a book. I don't have it right here, but I'm going to use his book as one of our Sunday chats. So if you would like to read it ahead of time, I know some people in the congregation have already read it. Rabbi Katzir has them here because he can buy them at a discount from what we can buy them from Amazon. It is Kindle and possibly Nook available if you want it, but if you want an autograph version, he does have it.
I do have Albertsons,
Okay.
if anybody wants those.
In terms of the books, after the chat, I will be selling copies of the books at about $4 cheaper than you can order it from Amazon, $16. And if you'd like it autographed, that's not expensive.
And then that's available on Nook?
I believe it is.
I know it is on Kindle.
I've never done Kindle.
But we're going to get Mahjong up and going again. So probably after the holidays, just to settle down. But if you are interested in being part of our Mahjong group, just let Patsy or myself know, and we'll let you know when the dates are going to be. We usually play after adult cat on a couple Sundays. So I need a little bit of opinion from you guys. I don't know how many of you were aware that Obama addressed the Jewish community specifically on Friday. There was a webinar. It was held for Jewish Federation. It was a private webinar where he did a question and answer session on the Iran agreement with Jewish Federation and I believe the American Congress of American Jewish Congress, which includes all URJ congregations. So as the president of URJ congregation, I was invited to participate, and somehow other people got invitations as well. I have clients. I wasn't able to sit on a live webinar. I have the taped webinar, and I don't know if you guys want to see that as a Sunday chat. I know it's walking a fine line, and it's not offering it as a political statement, but this is a fact of life of something going on in the United States, and he was specifically addressing us. It was specifically for our congregation. So if you guys would like to see it, we can set up a time with Adrian where we can do it for what it is. If everyone feels so comfortable and it's walking a line, then we don't have to do it, but yeah. So it was a private webinar, and it was by invitation for me, and it was like, not secretive, but the link was only sent at a certain time, and I had to register and whatever. So I don't know how they would feel about me necessarily sending out that link for everybody to have, but I don't have a problem. I haven't viewed it yet because I was busy. I just thought if I'm viewing it, if other people would like to see it too, I'm happy to see it that way.
Could you ask for it? So that people who can't get it might want to see it?
I'm not even sure, I'm not, yeah, I mean, I'm not even sure who I would ask. I guess I would have to ask you. Okay. So if people are interested in that, I guess let me know. If there's someone that has a real problem with it being a political thing, let me know. But, couple things, if you're going to hear some of these announcements again at services, but for those of you who don't know how our yard site system works, Marty has this thing called KaiTrack, and it's how we keep track of everybody's birthdays and anniversaries and yard sites. So when you fill out that information, it goes on KaiTrack. And every month, Rabbi Katzir gets on and pulls all of the birthdays, anniversaries, and yard sites for that month. That's how he knows what names to purchase. The one problem we have with it is that if you are within the first year of mourning for a family member, that name doesn't get pulled up every single month. It only pulls up on the month that the yard site will be. So if you have a family member and you are within the first year of mourning and you would like that name to stay on the list for the year, please email myself or Rabbi Katzir. I know that some people for personal reasons don't want the name to continue to be read, but if you do, we're not trying to leave anyone out. It doesn't pull with the system.
So how do the municipalities stay on the list?
Because Rabbi Katzir keeps a running list with dates, so he knows that until this date, he says that it ends.
Actually, I don't have the dates, I was just given.
I emailed them to you,
Oh, okay.
so you should have that on your email. And some people have asked for their names not to be continued to be read. So that's what we're trying to do, is I'm trying to get an updated list for Rabbi Katzir of everyone who has a family member that they're in the first year of mourning from. So that's what, if you do, please email me, because otherwise it won't pull up on the KaiTrack.
Brooke, if I can just add, the actual tradition of 1 year of mourning, in more traditional halakha, is only for parents. But if somebody has a relative who's not a parent that they would like to have your name read during that first year, that's fine, I have no problem with it. Just so you're aware of the tradition.
And I'll announce that at services as well, but we need you to help us get that list updated. As you can see, we have a new time for chat. We're actually, the old time for chat, we're starting at 11 instead of 10:30. You're welcome to come at 10:30 and schmooze. We'll be here, all be here. But because of the rabbis being pulled in a bunch of different directions with the new Or Katan and the religious school and all that, we're just going to, for consistency purposes, we're going to keep it at 11. If you remember last year, it would be 11 when the rabbi was here, it was at 10:30. If they weren't, it became confusing, nobody knew what the time was. So it's at 11 to 12:30. Preschool numbers are up. Rabbi Katzir is doing an adult education class. I'm sure he'll tell us or email us as we get a little bit closer, but it's coming up near the end of September. It's going to be a 5-week session. Alex at CSU Hillel got us a room on campus with Rabbi Katzir's condition that it had to be close to parking for us, free parking for us. So it's going to be in the evenings because that way permits and stuff don't count.
It's the only way to get it for free.
Yeah, but free is good. So that class will be starting, so you'll see some information coming around for that. He's also, again, you'll hear this later, but on December 3rd, going to be doing a Hanukkah program on the CSU campus for Hillel and Jewish students there. But that's
And also for the congregation.
and so that's for us as well. So there's a lot in the works. You're going to get a lot. Break the Fast is coming up. You've probably seen Pat's emails. Her hair is going to go gray. Please, again, I know you hear this spiel all the time, but RSVP makes a huge difference in knowing how many tables, how much linen, whether we need 2 of the rooms or 3 of the rooms, those sorts of things. So please let her know. And as with her and with me, if you want me to do something, it really, really is better. You can tell me, but I promise 5 seconds later I'm not going to remember. This is my to-do list of the last meeting I had with the rabbi. So it's easier if you shoot me an email, even if it's repetitive, because I put it on a to-do list and it's easier for me to keep track of what's been done and what hasn't and what we talked about. So same with Pat. You can tell her you're coming, but send an email. So I think that's all. And then Adrian.
Hi, I'm John Scherer. We're going to be shortly calling people to participate in the high holiday services. If you come from big congregations, there's also a few chosen people that seem to get that privilege. In our case, everybody gets to participate at least once. and the rabbi's reviewing the list of blessings and prayers and other things to see, finalizing that, and then I'll be calling you. Almost every part is in English. There's a little bit in Hebrew, and if you're here part of the time and not others, we try to schedule you for the services you're going to be here. And just look forward to my phone call, because we all participate, and it's actually a lot of fun. And we have a big break fast meal at the end of Yom Kippur also. Another program that we participate in, we just completed our quarterly or so participation, is Faith Family Hospitality. This is a house and feed the hungry program that basically the big churches that have a lot of space do the housing, and we all pitch in on cooking and chaperoning in the evenings and doing different activities. A lot of people here already participate. And I don't know if they're testing the system, but they just ended last week, and I just got my invitation for November. But it's November, I think it's November 1st. But right around the first part of November, it's a Sunday through a Saturday. You can be an evening chaperone. If you're really brave, you can stay all night and just be the emergency contact on site. Or you can prepare a dinner for about 20 to 30 people individually or as part of a group if you want to do it with a couple of people and serve dinner. And then we sit down and eat with the folks too, and it's a really nice program. It's also very revealing to see who a lot of the homeless are. And the good news is they're working their way into jobs and housing and out of it over time. But that's going to be coming up again in November, so look forward to people that want to join us to join us.
I have one more. I'm sorry, usually announcements are not this long, but it's the first time we've been together in a while. So Marty reminded me, one thing we do unique at Orthodox is that Yom Kippur at Yizkor, we read every name that's on our yard site list. But that memorial book is also open to anybody, any name, member or not member. So if you have a name that's not on our routine yard site list and you would like that name read during Yizkor, please let Marty know. You'll probably be seeing an email come around requesting us, but for the memorial book, let him know and we'll get those names on there and make sure that they get read.
Good morning. Good morning. That was lame. Good morning. Years ago, somebody in the South taught me there are two types of people who get up in this world. First type says, "Good morning, God," and the second type says, "Good God, it's morning." And you just came across as the latter group. But we're in this gorgeous new facility. It's the beginning of a new season. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the new season of Sunday Chats. You know that we're going to hear from Rabbi Hillel today. We have an interesting year ahead of us. And Brooke, is she still here?
I'm finding a way around.
To answer your question, the rabbi's brother, David Kurz, is going to be here from Israel and is going to be doing the September 20th chat. And the rabbi on October 11th is going to do his book. Now, we can put that film in, that tape in for the 25th, and I'll change the date I'm going to do the Grandies. If you think that's too far away from being timely.
I mean, I think it's going to happen regardless. I just think people are interested. We can figure that out. We'll work on it.
We have some interesting programs coming. Marcy Silverstein, how about November 8th? Okay. Is going to talk on anti-Semitism in Europe. Peter Springberg, with a little nudge,
Big good.
is going to speak about on righteous Gentiles. That would be on Sir Nicholas Witten, on Schindler, and on Wallenberg. And Peter will talk about a date before this is over.
And it will not be before January.
Yes, I understand that. I have quite a few dates to fill in here. I have been remiss in sending out an email to Brooke, who would forward it to the congregation about suggestions for topics. So I have my business cards here. If you want my email address, certainly it's on the old roster. But please approach me afterwards. Come up to me. Give me some ideas for topics, some speakers. And welcome, and thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Good morning. Great to have a prepared audience. of things that by the way, I know that in the past, usually, I guess, speakers have, sat and spoken, and it's been a little more informal. I find when I'm sitting, I don't have as much energy, and it's harder for me to project. So, I hope you don't mind. I don't mean it to be formal in any way. It's just...
Could you back up a minute so these people won't look at your back?
How's that? And I may need to write something up here if I do.
Would you like to show the books?
No, thank you. Okay. In thinking about a topic for this first chat that I'm doing, if you'll wrap up. I've done one before, but that was when we were considering hiring. That was my audition. In chatting with a lot of people in the congregation about Jewish tradition, about religion generally, about prayer, high holidays coming up, something that obviously is a problem for a number of people is the whole concept of God. Yeah. Not anything that's, gets involved in our prayers or anything. It's not terribly important, though. I think, certainly coming up to the High Holy Days, we talk about God a lot. The prayers are full of God language, right? We ask God to forgive our sins. We ask God to give us the strength to seek forgiveness from those that we have hurt and to grant forgiveness to those who have hurt us. But I know that many of us are not really sure what this concept means that we're praying to God. I have a feeling every year around the high holidays that people come to services and they want to believe in something. Years ago I was asked to define spirituality. And at the time I didn't have a definition. But I've worked on it ever since. And here's what I've come up with. I think spirituality is a universal quest for something that is greater than the merely human. Greater than the merely human. And one of the problems, I think, for many of us in thinking about this whole concept of God is in Western civilization, we somehow are given this image. I know it pops into my mind, and I'm sure it does in many other people's minds, of God as, I don't know, this old man with a white beard sitting on a cloud or on a throne, right? I like to think of it as, it's the same image as Santa Claus, he's just wearing a white robe instead of a red suit. But the role is similar, right? God is someone that we're asking things from. Right? We'll talk about prayer another time. Unfortunately, I won't have a Sunday chat available to talk about prayer before the high holidays. There's only so much we can get to. But, when I first started thinking, many of you know that I didn't grow up religious. We weren't members of the synagogue as I was growing up. I knew I was Jewish, but I didn't really know what that meant. I didn't really have much concept. Growing up in Los Angeles, I was a Dodgers fan. So there we go. All right. Something I should still do. But, so being Jewish to me when I was a kid is kind of like rooting for the home team, whatever that meant. It didn't really have any context. I came to the religious aspect of Judaism as an adult. And so, I think about this idea of God as a supersized person just a supersized person. Is that really the best we can do? Because frankly, how have we as normal-sized people done with the world? Not so good, right? And so the idea of, a person only much more so kind of scares me. I need God to be something different. And I know our rational minds, we are all raised in Western civilization to be very rational, right? We went to school, we were taught, think rationally, ask good questions, don't just take things on faith, make sure that everything, follows in a scientific, rational manner. We tell that to our kids when they go to public school, and then when they go to Hebrew school or religious school on the weekend. For too many years, we in the American Jewish community have said, this is what you do, never mind why, just do it. Don't ask questions, or we don't give them time to ask questions. And is it any wonder we've lost so many good people in the American Jewish community? I don't think it's any wonder at all. I think we pushed them away. I think modern minds are put off by all the anthropomorphisms that show up in the Bible about God, right? God's mouth, God's hands, God's tuchus, that too. The rabbis of the Talmud confronted that issue head on. They recognized, this is almost 2,000 years ago, they recognized people are going to have a problem reading the language of the Torah, seeing all these anthropomorphisms. They're going to think about God as a person. And they said, that's regrettable. Unfortunately, that's the only kind of language human beings can understand. But we have to remember and we have to teach that these are all metaphoric. And I'll come back to that in a little while in terms of what I mean by that. Another thing that puts a lot of people off, a couple of things, with the God language and the high holidays. We talk about God in male terms. God is a king. God is he. Well, as we all know, God is neither he nor she, although I like to shake people up every once in a while by referring to God as she, just to see if they're paying attention. Obviously, that's, we're put off by that. And there, in Hebrew, there's no neuter gender, grammatically speaking. You're stuck with either male or female language. And so it got translated to English that way. And anyway, would you want to be using a neuter gender for God? So it's really it's a problem. It's a difficulty. There's no question. We struggle with it as a tradition. And the idea of king, or we've referred to God as Father, one of the most popular melodies in the high holiday services of Inu Malkeinu, traditionally is translated as Our Father, Our King. And of course, the traditional high holiday Machzor, which we will be using again this year, has that translation. Although we're going to be using a reading supplement that tries to change that. And hopefully next year, we will have purchased the new Machzor of the Reform movement, which has much more egalitarian language. So slowly, we're getting there. But we have all of these problems, all of these issues with the whole concept. I had suggested some books for you to read preparing for this talk today, and I'm not really going to talk about those books. I suggested them to you as preparation, and that's for any of you that take classes with me in the future. That's pretty much my style. I suggest a book because I think it's a very good place to start, but then I generally don't refer to it during class sessions. I talk about things, I take things that are in the book and move beyond, or just attack from a different direction. But it's just that much more material. But one of the things, the primary thing that I wanted people to see in the books that I recommended was that the Jewish tradition actually teaches us very little about what we are supposed to believe about God. There are some religions that have lists of things that you must believe if you want to be considered one of us. Right? The Roman Catholic Church calls it a catechism. There's never been a catechism in Judaism. There was one major attempt to create one, and that was by Maimonides, the great rabbi of the Middle Ages, and it didn't take. As respected, as looked up to as Maimonides is in everything Jewish, and we're talking Jews here, he couldn't get them to agree that these are things you have to believe to be a Jew. Is it any wonder? Right? It's not like we've got a structure or a hierarchy like, for example, the Catholic Church that can create these and insist upon them that you must believe. So when I started my own journey into the religious tradition of Judaism, and I started working on my own concept of God, what does that mean to me? Well, I started with this idea, that I mentioned a little while ago. I can't think of God as just like a person, only much more so. Right? First of all, there's the anthropomorphism problem. In the Jewish tradition, God is clearly not physical. And the tradition absolutely insists on it. That's one thing that the tradition does insist on. God is not corporeal. God is not physical. Hence the problem with all the anthropomorphic language that I mentioned a moment ago that the rabbis of the Talmud address. So I looked through the tradition, I looked through the prayer book, the liturgy, to try to figure out what am I going to do with this concept of God. Well, what it comes down to, as I see it, is if we go to the central affirmation of faith of the Jewish tradition, the Shema. Right? 6 words in Hebrew. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Doesn't get any more basic than that. Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God. Adonai is one. That's the classic translation. It could also be translated in a number of other ways. Adonai alone. Only Adonai is our God and not any other gods. And so on. So, what does this central affirmation of faith teach us about what we are supposed to believe about God? Adonai Elohim. Adonai is our God. Well, who's Adonai? Adonai is a deity that we as a people established a relationship with, according to our tradition, 4,000 years ago with Abraham. Adonai Elohim, only Adonai. So, what we get from the Shema is, God is, there is a God. Whatever that means, there is God. We're told that God is one and not many. And we're reaffirming that Adonai is the deity, God, with whom we as a people have had a relationship for 4,000 years. God is one. We are in a relationship with God. Guys, that's it. Really. When I look through the tradition, I just don't see anything else that is really insistent about what it is I am supposed to believe about God. Is there any questions or comments along the way? Yes?
I have some problems, I won't bring all of them up.
I'm just about done.
I decided in my own head a long time ago that the idea of God stopped micromanaging or macromanaging anything that happened on this earth when we entered something into Israel in the ancient days. And that's the only problem I have, because I can't understand why we would pray to an entity that doesn't have a way to respond.
I have a question, just for conversation's sake, because I don't know how I believe in that. I have a question just for conversation's sake. Why is it important that we have one God and not many? Why is that such a great transition?
My question goes along with what Marcy was saying. How do we know? A relationship involves two. And so how do we know that it's coming in the other direction?
Could you please repeat the questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, you don't necessarily feel that a response, but the response I feel is how we act with what we're asking something, okay? Now, God's not telling me what to do, but it's how I react to, and then lets me think about this more, and then I react to that.
One of the things I find is that when I'm thinking of asking, I'm asking of myself.
Yes. Yes. Here's what I want to do right now. I want to back up from everything I've been talking about so far about the Jewish tradition about God and talk for a little bit about just the God concept in general. Not Adonai, not a specific God. Just humanity, as far as we can tell, throughout human history, has had the need, felt the need to designate deity. Okay. Why? Why has humanity felt that need? What purpose, what need does that fulfill for us as human beings?
I think, for some, it's someone to blame. Things don't go right. Okay, it's God, where were you? Why didn't you help us? Where have you been? And then it's like, okay, maybe we're the other way too. It's like, okay, we're going to be very, the word is over my head right now. But we don't want to say, it's because I did it. I am awesome. I did this. So you put the praise on someone else too. Because maybe you don't want to be sought out or whatever.
People want to say, why don't you comfort? The same reason we always look to our parents. The idea that we're not alone, that there's a purpose, that somebody has some idea of what's going on, and we can understand it. Comfort.
It's our ability to seek comfort and ask and thank and speak to in total confidence. We don't ever have to worry that our secrets are going to be revealed. Confidence. A-N-T.
So, throughout history, certainly in lectures, there are instances, there are times where you feel like, I'm not able to solve this problem, or I have something, I need help. And so, ask.
I think, in some ways, I kind of see it as similar to science, is we feel out of control, and we want someone or something to be in control.
Give it also meaning.
Peter, what do you want if you're asking, what do you want the answer to be?
We want guidance.
The ask can vary greatly.
Yeah, sometimes you want God to move mountains, you know.
Well, I'm kind of following what Marcy said. I'm following what Marcy said. I need to make a thought. I'm wondering if some people view God as projecting what they want in themselves onto something else.
Anything that really doesn't fit into what we've already got up here, anything new.
Moral standards, some sort of moral, thing to follow.
Guidance?
Well, yeah, but
Moral.
more like an ethics and moral,
All right,
but, yeah, that's
moral guidance.
obviously very subjective.
This might come under meaning, but I think the whole idea of God is trying to make sense out of the concept that there's something greater than ourselves. So I think that's probably, that's that.
Ms. Ryan?
Connection to a greater whole, bigger part,
And that's
connection.
Anything else, students? You can rephrase these in all kinds of ways, but is the source? Meaning?
fear. There's a tremendous amount of fear in merely being human, I think. It goes beyond it. We don't receive the comfort. We perceive it.
Right.
Direction.
It's the old
Although that says moral guidance, but
Well,
it's the old question of we
Just
don't know where we came from, we don't know where we're going. So we attribute it to the great unknown.
that classic annual question that I always ask at the high holidays every year. Where are we going and why are we in this campus?
Redemption. Redemption.
Oh, that's impressive.
Or I would add to that judgment. It's a reason to behave if someone's watching.
All of these things are certainly parts of various religions. Not all of them emphasize the same ones, the same factors. One of the reasons that I suggested the books that I suggested to prepare for today was to show, to demonstrate that in the Jewish tradition there are so many, many different ways, all of them perfectly acceptable in the tradition, to perceive God. Right? Just curiosity's sake, how many of you read one or more of the books that I recommended for today? And that's right. Yes. Okay. Well, okay, you didn't read it, but trust me when I tell you.
Go ahead.
Oh. In one of the books, everything from, taking all of these as part of a Jewish image of God, all the way to the other end of a spectrum that we might imagine about belief in God, that would include the expression of a Jewish atheist. Right? I was amused when somebody recently described themselves as a Catholic atheist, and I'm thinking, that doesn't work. Jewish atheist works because being a Jew is not just a religious question, right? It's an identity question. It's a belonging question. Catholic atheist.
I want to go back to here for a minute. Just as a great distinguisher of Judaism is that we believe in only one God, isn't another distinguisher that we really are taught to love God and not fear Him, or as for her, whereas other religions put the fear of God into people.
As a matter of fact,
You're all over the
as Willie just pointed out, there is the word fear all over the Torah. But here's the issue with that. Here's the issue with that, guys. And this is a really important difference. There's fear and there's fear. Right? The word in Hebrew in the Torah, 98, 99% of the time, where you see the English word fear, the Hebrew word yirah, don't worry about it, it won't be on the quiz, does not mean fear in the same sense as if you're being attacked by a wild animal, for example. That's pachad. And that's very, very rare in the Torah, certainly when referring to God. The kind of fear that we're talking about, and I wish the translators would translate it this way instead of using the word fear, is fear in the sense of being overwhelmed by the awe and the majesty of God, which is a whole different kind of fear. And it really goes to the love and the relationship that we are asked to have with God, both as individuals, but even more so as a community, than the word fear in the other sense.
Should awe be on your list?
Don't worry about this. I'll come back to that.
But we're coming up to the holidays,
We are.
and if I were to believe this, and I know it's basic here, but I don't, that God determines who will live and who will die, and that, to me, is just a bunch of whatever, but that's supposed to go, you fear, you've got to, am I going to die, am I going to be in pain, am I going to,
Okay. I want to go backwards a little bit and tell you what I have done in this struggle to understand the God concept within the framework of the Jewish tradition. It doesn't make my way right and your way wrong. As I said, there are many, many, many ways to think about God that are perfectly acceptable in the Jewish tradition. If I can't accept God as a supersized person, right, which in some ways makes reading the Torah real easy, right, just accept the anthropomorphisms for what they are, for the images that they're putting into my mind. But I don't want to do that. It doesn't work for us. Let's go back to the basic idea of deity, of God in the generic sense. As far as I could tell, when I was doing this work for myself, one thing that every concept of God in every human civilization has ever had in common is that what's designated as God or gods is supposed to be the focal point of my life, whatever that concept stands for in that culture. Right? If it's not God, if it's not a focal point of my life, a God, or in our sense, Adonai, ideally in the tradition is supposed to be all-encompassing. How many of you have read anything by Abraham Joshua? Okay. Heschel talks about this all the time. If God isn't at the center of everything, isn't at the center, whatever that word God means to us, isn't at the center of everything, then it's not God. The other problem is, in Judaism, certainly in any of the modern religions, not so much in the older pre-monotheistic religions, but certainly in the modern monotheistic religions, everybody says God is infinite. But then they want to define God. This is what in classic Greek is called an oxymoron. right? The word define literally means putting limits on. So if you insist on defining God, then it isn't God anymore. If one of your criteria is that God is it. It's an oxymoron.
Well, I was going to say something. I'd like to kind of add to the list a little bit, if I could. I thought of something that's different than what I see on the list there. And as someone that is a very recent atheist, I kind of see God in the fact that we're all here because we believe in some form of God.
It's something.
Right. Like the concept at least unites us as a group. I mean, we help each other, we provide community, we comfort each other, there's goodness in our relationships.
In other words, the idea, the concept of God is a focal point for this community. A focal point. Maybe not the only one, but certainly one. Right? And if we went around the room, if we had the time for each one of us to describe exactly what it is we think about God, you know, if we've got, I don't know, 35 people here, we've got at least 45 of them. We are talking Jews here. If we're 35 Israelis, we have at least 45 political parties. So, to me, something that comes down as very basic in the human understanding of the idea of deity is something that is central to my life. Okay, so far so good. But what is it? What is God that is the center of my life? What does that mean for my life?
I have a question in terms of how Judaism would answer this. I would describe myself as a Jewish atheist. And very often when I'm in temple during the services, I feel like an imposter because, you know, I believe in a lot of the things, but once you get into God, I'm not there. In Judaism, and I use this word loosely, would it be acceptable to not have your God concept as an external force, but couldn't it be something that's internal about you, about your values, about your way of wanting to be in the world?
Not only is that acceptable in the Jewish tradition, but that is the most common description of the God concept in the Jewish tradition that I have found in my studies. And let me expand on that. Yeah.
I was just going to say, God is something, a spirit that resides in all of us. It helps to guide us morally and guide whatever way we do. We need guidance. When we die, Father was born and it exists in somebody else.
What happens after we die, who knows? That's not something we try to teach, because we don't know. Right? But yes, all of these things that you folks are saying now go exactly to where I'm going with this. Thank you. We did not plan this. I did not pay. But that's it. If God is not a person, and for me, God can't be a person, right? Well, here's another way of thinking about it. Most religious traditions have thought about God as a noun. What's a noun? They taught us in junior high school. Person, place, or thing. Right? He's got a person? No. He's got a place? No. He's got a thing? No, that's not a thing. God is something in my life. You know, somehow, a living something in my life. And that's not a thing. So a noun doesn't work. And the other problem with thinking of God as a noun is we always want to attach adjectives to a noun. We want to describe, define God. It doesn't work.
It's limiting.
It's limiting, exactly.
But as place, you could say God is omnipresent.
We'll come back to that. Hold the thought. If I don't come back to it, please remind me, because it's important in the Jewish tradition. So, If thinking about God as a noun doesn't work, what many, particularly in modern Judaism, have suggested, not just Judaism, modern monotheistic religion, what about if we think of God as a verb? How should we be acting?
I'm going to God.
Not literally in a grammatical sense, but in the idea of God as a shorthand for how do I act. In other words, for me, God is a label, and it's much more complicated than that. Please don't narrow it just to that, but it's a starting point for the discussion for me. That the word God, for me, becomes a label on a package of ideas, on a package of values, of how am I supposed to act in the world. And it is a given, if you read very much Jewish theology at all, going all the way back and right up to the present, in all of the movements, including the Reform movement, belief in Judaism is important, but how we act is considered more important. If we are judged as human beings, we are not judged on what we believe, we are judged on what we do. That is true about the Jewish tradition anywhere you want to go in the literature. Belief is important because it undergirds the action. If you have the belief, it's expected that you are more likely to act according to those beliefs. But there's a classic theological situation that's thrown out at students in seminaries all across the spectrum of religions. If you have a situation where somebody is acting badly, but they believe in God, really in trouble. Or you have somebody who considers themselves an atheist, but is acting what we would say in a way that helps others. Judaism, I won't speak for other religions, you can make up your own mind from what you know, but Judaism, every day of the week, if given that stark choice, will take the action over the belief every day of the week. Ideally, we would have the belief also. But belief in what? Again, belief in what? Belief in a non-corporeal, hypothetical, out there deity that we have no understanding of what is that? I mean, the Greek idea of God, going back to the ancient Greek philosophers, was Aristotle's unmoved mover. Right? So transcendent, so beyond us, that God kick-started the world and disappeared, and couldn't care less about us. Right? It's still a personalized image, but of somebody who doesn't care. There's a common criticism from some of the early writers in the Christian church that Judaism is about laws, right? Just laws, not love. Christianity is about love. As an oversimplification, it almost works. As an oversimplification, but it really doesn't work. But I want to give you, Peter, go ahead, what did you have?
My concept of that Tertullian was not necessarily quite what you're saying, but God in that image may care, but has granted us free will. and therefore it has to stand.
That's still the externalized God.
That's right.
God.
What you're saying is God is that quiet voice inside of us.
Well, and this is what the tradition tells us. It is right.
Or, well, this is not what I was saying. Or Peter also, like, in that book, it mentioned the Steinberg, the limited theism. That was sort of, that's sort of like what Peter was saying.
Yeah.
Caring, but not can't do anything. What I was going to say originally was, we always seem to pin our moral ideas onto whatever God we believe in. And what's to say that God has that idea? I mean, we all think we shouldn't kill, but what's to say that God doesn't want us to kill? We think, I mean, of course, I don't think that God wants me to kill, but I'm just posing that as a question.
Are you 64 yet?
There was a Christian philosopher in the 20th century in France who once wrote that in the beginning God created humanity, and every day since then humanity has returned the favor. God has created man in his own image, and every day after that, Blaise Pascal. I want to give you an example. Oh, yeah.
Just one thing that, like, you know, external and internal, the whole idea of like God is that, like, with the free will thing, is that we have the ability to choose whether we want to see God or not, whether it's internal or external. And so the thing is that the whole world is, like, God is hiding himself or herself or itself. God's self. And we have to kind of lead through it, both internally and externally, how we want to manage it and what we do want to see. Do you want to see that it's just you that did it? Or do you want to see that it is something else?
Yeah. Free will is very much an important element of Judaism. We do not believe in predestination. We believe in free will. We believe that we were created by God, whatever that means to you, with free will, in the hope, according to the tradition, that we would exercise that free will to choose to be partners with God in the ongoing project of completing creation, otherwise known as Tikkun Olam. This is a very, very central part of who we are as a people. I want to give another example of, I talked earlier about looking at all the anthropomorphisms in the Torah as metaphor. And I want to give a classic example that I think is, to me, was very helpful when I was trying to figure all of this out as to how it works for me. And it goes back to this idea of how we act, how we behave, how we treat others. Book of Exodus. All right, Moses went up the mountain, got the Ten Commandments, brought them down, found the folks building the golden calf, smashed the first set of tablets, right? Did whatever he did to the nasties that forced Aaron into building the golden calf. Back up the mountain to get a second set, right? And I have this image in my mind of Moses going to God and saying, you know, I'm an old man. I'm 80 years old. I've been up and down this mountain. I've lost count how many times I've been up and down this mountain. Every time I'm up here for 40 days and 40 nights, and I'm not eating and drinking. You know, I'm tired. I want something for me this time. Right? Not just for them, but fine, I'll take the second set of tablets. I want to see you face to face, God. I'm paraphrasing here. You understand that? But this is how I see these stories. They're very personal for me. And Moses, you know, he's put on this pedestal sometimes, and he's so human. He really is when you look closely. So he says to God, show me your face. Show me, it literally says, show me your